today's episode of Free and Alive, we've decided to bravely tackle the topic of sex, because in the organization it's only ever really talked about in very negative terms and in a very, very narrow setting, which is really just meetings and watchtower articles. So we're going to talk about the way it's weaponized by the organization. And it is probably their most powerful weapon that they use on individuals and to control people. So what do you reckon, Quinn?
So they basically make sex a weapon and a form of control. And I think that the biggest offense of this is how if you have two people that are in a bad marriage and Jehovah's Witnesses, and you're told that no matter what, you cannot divorce. So even a situation if a man is beating his wife, she's still told you can't divorce him. The most they'll say is you can separate from them, but you can't divorce. And they say the only way that you can divorce is if someone commits adultery. So a lot of people have done this because they get married young. You're not allowed to date without a chaperone. So a lot of cases when Jehovah's Witnesses get married, they barely know the person they're getting married. They marry them based on stats, JW stats. The most you can pretty much do is hold hands, right? You can't spend any time alone with them. So then sometimes people get married, and one, they may not be sexually compatible, or even if they are, sometimes the marriage just doesn't work. And it's just like a failed marriage. So then they're told, well, the only way you can leave is if someone cheats. So people will go out and have a one night stand just to say, oh, I'm scripturally free to divorce now. And that's one sick way that it's used to control people is you can only get out of marriage if you go sleep with somebody. Like it's completely distorted. And some congregations will play games and they'll say, oh, well, even if you cheat on someone, it's the innocent mate that can decide to let you go or not. That if they don't allow you to divorce, you still gotta stay with them. Some congregations don't follow that, but some do. But of course, in many cases, the mate that has been cheated on most of the time, they're not going to want to stay married anyway. But that's one of the ways that they weaponize sex. Like sex is basically the weapon to get out of a bad marriage. Um, then another thing is not to get too graphic, so I'll be careful how I say this, but I think it's important to talk about this, how much they control sex in a marriage is that some of the old watchtowers had actually gave instructions on what you're not allowed to do when you have sex. Like it was saying that oral sex is a sin. And the Watchtower doesn't, I mean, the Bible doesn't say nothing about that, but Watchtower says that something about the one article that I read, it said something that because God gives us a mouth to speak, that it's wrong to use our mouth in ways that God didn't give us to, like, that's insane to come up with something like that. Like, who sits in the writing department and makes that up, that comes up with that? Oh, because we have a mouth to speak, therefore it's wrong that we would use our mouth with anything sexual. You can kiss somebody, right? So if two people are married, if they can kiss on the lips, if they can use their mouth to kiss, if they want to do other things, and again, I'm not trying to get graphic, but like we shouldn't even have to have this discussion because Watchstar has no business in the bedroom to tell couples what they can and can't do. And so one interesting thing that happened to me was I was not a Jehovah's Witness my whole life, so I've been in relationships. And when I first got married, the only time I've ever been married was because I married a Jehovah's Witness. And I remember the first time that, we were doing stuff, and I basically tried to go down there just to do something for her. And she freaked out. Like if a tarantula was down there, like she's like there's a poisonous spider, and she just like jumped up. And I'm like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she's like, oh, you can't do that. I'm like, why not? And she couldn't even explain. I I just know it's wrong. I forget why, but I know that it's wrong. So like that was news to me. So Anyway, so then when I looked it up, I ended up finding the Watchtower article that had said that after she freaked out about it. And so, and our, I mean, I won't get into unnecessary detail, but that's a lot of control to basically tell people what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. Um, and then of course, a lot of people have their sexual feelings suppressed because you're basically told, like, here's the thing. I think that when you're a teenager, it's healthy to look at people with the opposite sex. I think that's healthy. It's normal, I think. I'm not saying that high school kids should be having sex, but at the same time, what do you think happens on prom night? Like, I mean, usually sometimes that happens. I'm not saying I recommend that, but like it's normal for kids to be able to experiment when they start to have those feelings. But if you grow up in Watchtower, you're basically told you shouldn't date anyone, even you shouldn't even date other witnesses until they say you can think about getting married. That's how they say it. So even if a witness is attracted to another witness, they're made to believe you shouldn't even think about dating unless you're ready to get married. So what happens a lot that I've seen it with people that grow up witnesses is that these feelings are suppressed so strongly that they just get married as soon as they can. As soon as they're 18 and maybe have a job, they want to just get married. But then they rush into it, so then they feel that, oh, I'm not happy now, so then they got to go sleep with someone to get out of the marriage. But I don't know. It's all sick. I don't know what your experience has been, um, being a witness and the way that they weaponize sex and use sex really as a form of control, and it messes with people psychologically, I think.
I think they cause huge amounts of damage. Now, why do they weaponize sex? Because sex is actually powerful. That's the whole point, that they use it because they know that it's going to work. You don't need to be having sex to survive, but it's a huge part of human experience. It's how we procreate. There would be not one single person on this planet if people didn't have sex and didn't have quite a strong drive to have sex with each other. And I think I particularly resent, from my experience, how as a young woman it left me really quite vulnerable, that there was never conversations about the fact that I was gradually becoming more attractive to the opposite sex, that would get me certain types of attention, how to handle it. I was never taught about some key things. Nobody ever taught me about consent. Nobody ever taught me that if a boy is pressuring you to have sex, why should you say no? You know, it just was. And then if you're, say a young witness dating another young witness, and you kiss and things get a little bit heated, maybe there's some touching through clothes. I know somebody who was disfellowshipped because they touched their girlfriend's breast through clothes. Because why? Because the elders didn't like that person, they wanted to get rid of him. They disfellowshipped him for admitting to that. Now, it's just crazy. And what I find that it did is it put a lot of guilt and shame on anything to do with sex. So then you're thinking it's even when you're married, you're thinking it's somehow dirty and wrong, and it's not. It should be something that you can enjoy. There's that whole, I would say one thing I observed, for example, is especially people that are brought up as witnesses, and especially I would say more the young women, the young girls, they have no concept and they don't view themselves as a sexual being at all. They haven't got any awareness and consciousness of their sexuality, or they go the other way and they're almost like playing with it because they've started to realize they are attractive to men, and then they might be quite a bit inappropriate with it because they realize that, oh, even the married men, the older men find me attractive, let me use that to my advantage. So it seemed to go toxic either way. I didn't see many people have a healthy relationship with sex or with themselves in terms of their sexuality. And I would say another thing that kind of concerns me is that you can't ever talk about it. So say you're a young person, you're going through some feelings where you're maybe attracted to someone of the same sex? Who are you going to talk to? And then another thing I did discover is those sisters that never ever thought of themselves as a sexual person, when they then get married, and a lot of them would get married very young, terrible sexual issues and problems in the bedroom. You know, the young husband, all excited, finally got a naked woman in my bed. She's terrified. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know how to enjoy herself. She doesn't know anything. Anything.
Yeah, and there was,
And yeah.
oh, I was just gonna say that there was because you know how different congregations, like sometimes Jehovah's Witnesses that hear things on channels like ours, they'll say, "Oh, that's an apostate lie. That's not how things are." Well, every congregation does things slightly different, and elders do make their own rules up in congregations, but they still say it's from Jehovah. Don't question the elders. But I remember we had this one elder who said during a comment, I forget what the subject matter was about, but he made a comment during the meeting. It was about the something about the meeting, but he basically said this where that some people have chosen like on a meeting night not to have sex. But he said it almost like he was telling the congregation that like that's a good thing. Like you like some Christians choose that, you know, they shouldn't have sex on a meeting night. But you know how the congregation is set up that when an elder says something like that, people take it as when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the Ten Commandments. It was from the platform, or an elder said it. That's how it's perceived. So when he said that, I remember I started thinking like, is it wrong? I mean, generally, like we never really, me and my wife never really did anything on a meeting night just because you're so busy for a watchtower. You know, you got to get ready for the meeting and prepare. So it's never came up. And I think most witnesses probably that doesn't come up. But where does that elder get off saying that like we should choose not to have sex on a meet? Like, but it's just a way that they make up all these rules and regulations. So basically, like going to your point about people are made to feel that like sex is dirty and like you're conscious about it. Like when that elder made that comment, there's going to be people in the congregation that will now start to think weird about that. Oh, it's wrong. No, we shouldn't do that. It's a meeting night. Like it's the Sabbath, basically. Like we should be doing that. And as far as I understand, there's nothing wrong with a husband and wife doing things on the Sabbath. Like sexually, the Sabbath had to do with work, if I'm not mistaken. So even on the Sabbath, there was no, but that's just how distorted this religion gets. So they told you basically oral sex is wrong. Some elders will push the idea you shouldn't be having sex on a meeting night. I mean, it's crazy. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's just one of those things that shows that this religion, they just control people. They weaponize sex. They tell you when you should be having sex, in a sense, who you should be having sex with. And then if you want to get out of the marriage, well, you got to go have a one night stand if you want to get out of the marriage. And another thing too with the whole, and I understand the principles of basically, you know, no sex before marriage. That could be very beautiful if two people can come together and do that. But at the same time, to be realistic, how many marriages have problems or end in divorce because there's problems in the bedroom? That's just a fact. So when witnesses get married, it's like a death sentence because you're basically told it's like if a criminal gets life in prison, like your life in prison, you're never ever going to get out of prison. You're going to die in prison. Well, that's how witnesses are made to feel about marriages. Like once you get married, that's it. You're stuck with them forever. You can never leave. And the witnesses that think they're going to walk into a new system, well, if you walk into a new system with your spouse, that's eternity. So some witnesses they have in the mindset, I'm with this person for eternity. The only way I can ever leave is if I go have a one night stand. That's the only way I can get. If I go sleep with someone and commit a sin, I also get a free pass to get out of a marriage. Um, but then so like when witnesses get married and you're made to believe you can never ever leave that person, but then you can't have sex before marriage. What happens when two people get married and there's problems in the bedroom? And it doesn't even necessarily have to be problems in a bedroom. It could sometimes even just be a person's sex drive. Like some people they may want it every other day, or in some cases every day. This a spouse may only maybe once or twice a month, but that can be a problem. And I know that there's a scripture that talks about, and it's funny how witnesses always cherry pick scriptures, but there's a scripture that says that like something about if you deprive the mate, they're going to be tempted. And I'm not saying that anyone should ever feel forced to have sex just because their mate wants to, but that's a Bible principle that's accurate. If you are depriving a mate that is more sexually active and wants that, they're going to be tempted to cheat. That's just a fact. So even if there's no problems in the bedroom when stuff is going on, if the sex drives are not matched up, like that can still lead someone to be tempted to cheat. And yeah, and I think a lot of witnesses, there's just a lot of sexual distortion. And one thing I know from being a ministerial servant and working with the elders is recently, well, when I say recently, I don't mean recently because I've been not a Jehovah's Witness, but recently as far as my last year, I think, being a witness, and I think, or no, before I became an active, so this might have been around 2021 maybe, or 2020, but this elder had told me this. He said that they're now more relaxed with brothers in appointed positions watching pornography. And what he
Mm.
said was that before, if an appointed brother, if you were an elder or ministerial servant and you got caught watching pornography, that would be an automatic, you lose your privileges. Or not even privileges. I don't even want to say that. It's brainwashed when they say privileges, basically free labor. You're gonna lose your free labor status. It's not a privilege, but they would say you're gonna lose your position as a ministerial servant and elder if you ever got caught watching pornography. So this elder was telling me that they've gotten direction from Bethel to relax that because, and this is coming from an elder, he said the direction that they got was that it was basically an epidemic of appointed brothers watching pornography, that there were so many brothers getting in trouble that they had to relax it and say, okay, we won't, we'll just give you a warning, and I don't know how many warnings they got, but basically, as long as no one knew about it, because the witnesses are all about show, like if the congregation knew someone was watching pornography, they would feel like, okay, well, we have to discipline you because other people know about it, which if God watches everything, there shouldn't be a separate standard as far as what people know, what people not know. Basically, if God's watching this organization is from God, there shouldn't be no standard on, well, if nobody knows, then we'll let it slide. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic for another video. But with the pornography thing with a bunch of brothers, if no one really knew about it, but it surfaced somehow and the elders were worried about it, they would give them a pass because it's become such a problem. But the question is why? Why are appointed brothers struggling with pornography? And most appointed brothers are married because they got the stats, the JW stats. Watchtower tells sisters what you need to look for in a man is someone who's got the stats: ministerial servant, pioneer, elder, Bethelite, circuit overseer. So any brother that has one of those stats, they're kind of like a celebrity, basically. And women are trained to think, oh, that's a good person I should marry because he's got stats. Not whether or not he makes you feel good or you guys have things in common. No, it's all JW stats. So uh, basically, what I'm saying is that just about any appointed brother can get married. If there's an appointed brother that's not married, it's probably because he doesn't want to, because he's got the stats. But anyway, why are
Mm.
there such a problem with pornography amongst men who are married and probably have wives that are more attractive than they are? Like, because when you're an appointed brother, you can basically get any woman you want in a sense, because I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Like, especially from a woman's standpoint, like, what do you see as far as how if you're a brother with these titles, it's like you can have anyone you want.
It absolutely works like that. That you get some really quite average men with stunning women that in the real world they would not have a chance of getting. And it's quite amusing. And you also get brothers who often marry like a much younger, attractive woman. And I find that quite nauseating. Um, But you know what, is I suppose from a man's point of view, if you got that opportunity, why would you not take it? But there's one sort of thought that I keep having as we talk about this, and it is that really and truly witnesses have got terrible sex lives, and they're probably having the worst sex around, because like you said, there's silly rules about what you can and can't do in marriage. Now, even when I got married, there was a whole to do about, oh my goodness, there's articles that tell you what you can and can't do. Now, thankfully, an elder said to my husband, who was panicking about this, an elder said to my husband, really and truly, what you and your wife do in the bedroom is nobody's business. So, you know, just follow your conscience and don't discuss it with anybody. It's nobody else's business. Now, that was quite balanced kind of advice. As long as but he was basically saying, as long as both of you are comfortable, don't tell it, don't discuss it with anybody, don't tell, it's not their business. But on what planet did the brothers in the writing department have a meeting where they decided they should write about these things and give people instructions? Like, what, did Jesus tell them to do that? I don't think so. So to me, that's already quite a perverted mindset. It's a perverted mindset that I'm going to get involved in people's sex lives and make it a biblical thing. That's pretty twisted. So the fact that they even did it is like a big red flag that there's something really not right with these men. Maybe they have a lot of sexual issues themselves. Maybe they're repressed in some way. Maybe they are not being sexually active. Maybe they are very active but hiding it because they want to be seen as men of God. I think there is a really sad sort of realization that I've had, that it does seem to be that a lot of this religion making rules around sex causes more problems than anything else. And I think, as much as I do believe that the Bible's principles for morality are there for a reason, I do think that we can't disregard them. I believe they are a guideline. And at the end of the day, God knows sex is going to happen, because that's how people are wired. And it's, you know, and I think there needs to be a more realistic approach to it. I think there needs to be more openness, that you can talk about it. Because sex is so demonized, you can't admit to anybody that you had sex with somebody you were not married to. Because if you admit it or talk to somebody about it, they will straight away say, you've got to go to the elders, you've got to tell them, you've got to tell the other person's elders if they're not in your congregation. It's a big stress. Everybody has to be seen by elders. They might get disfellowshipped. It basically destroys your life. Having sex is so risky as a witness, because you could lose your life over it. So what kind of psychological pressure is that? It's insane. It's actually insane what they do. And I also think that, as much as they're under fire at the moment for the disfellowshipping in general, and the fact that it infringes on human rights, well, isn't it a human right to decide when and how and who you're having sex with within the laws of the land? Okay. So at what point did they decide that they have to add all that stress and control around it and use it to control people? And I think it really messes up the male-female dynamic. I think in the organization, it's very hard to have a healthy relationship with a member of the opposite sex in any setting, ever. So it kind of skews the relationship with men and women. I think it causes a lot of things to just be repressed. It seems to drive a lot of people to porn as an alternative. And yeah, it's they're basically meddling with something that they should never have meddled with, because it's not their business. And they've caused people a lot of harm. I think they've taken away the ability to enjoy sex from a lot of people. They've riddled people for years with guilt, shame, and feeling bad about themselves for being a normal teenager. Think about it. You have some slip ups as a teenager, mess about with a boy or a girl. They will absolutely destroy your life over it, even if they don't disfellowship you. You will be made to feel that you are not any good. You're now tainted. Nobody's going to want to marry you. You know, you're a shameful person. You've got all these problems. It's mad. It's madness.
So three things I was thinking of as you were talking. One, that elder that had talked to you and her husband, I think that like that's an example because elders are brainwashed too. They're part of the whole system. So there's some elders that really are trying to do good. So that elder probably knows like when the Watchtower wrote that article telling them like, basically what you're allowed to do, he probably said, screw that. Like Watchtower's not telling me, I'm just gonna keep it personal. So that's a situation where he's probably doing the right thing by giving your husband the same advice that him and his wife follow. Like, you know what, just we don't gotta tell them do, we're gonna do whatever we're gonna do. Just basically don't tell anybody. Um, but another thing that they've done too is they've also demonized masturbation. Now this is where you really mess people up because now I know Samantha, you're more of a Bible scholar than I am. My position is I'm not really I can't say I have faith in the Bible anymore, but I know that you do, and I still respect the Bible and I respect people's beliefs. But so maybe you can comment on this more than what I know. But from what I understand, is that no, the Bible does not specify it and says that masturbation is a sin.
You're
So
right. It doesn't say anything on it.
for them to take something like that and also demonize that, it's like they're messing with something that's natural because like here's the thing. I think that this may sound crazy to certain people, but I feel like the fact that people can masturbate is like a gift from God because it allows you to release that sexual energy safely, right? You don't have to go and have a one night stand or then you get children out of wedlock and certain like it's kind of like a protection to release that. No one's getting hurt. You're by yourself. Like so and God didn't have to make humans even with the ability to do that. So to me, I feel like the fact that you can self-regulate that is kind of a protection. So when witnesses also demonize that, they're really setting them up for failure because they can't even do something that maybe is normal that would help them maybe be more balanced. So that messes people up too to make them feel like they can't masturbate, and that also is not biblical. It's not, and that's where maybe you can touch on that not being biblical. But one more thing before you answer that question is that I think sisters have it so much worse because so everybody knows that the ratio of sisters and brothers in the organization is off. There's way more women in the organization than brothers. And then brothers can kind of marry whoever they want because the only thing that a brother is kind of told to look at is, well, is she pioneering? What are her field service hours? Where women are given a higher standard on, well, he should be a minister or servant. He should be an elder. He should have these spiritual goals. So women are more restricted as far as the men that they should be looking at. But because there's already a lack of, like, because the ratio is off, women could have a natural attraction. Like, I'll just give you a scenario. Say you take a white woman who's maybe attracted to black men, but her congregation is all white people for the most part, maybe even her circuit, but that's what she's attracted to. Well, a woman can't even go after what she's attracted to because, again, the whole restriction on where you can only be intimate with another witness, and this witness should have all these stats. So I think a lot of times women are more so like they're bearing people, like they're not even fully, maybe even able to express what they're attracted to. They're told marry your brother that has these stats. And I think sometimes you see that too. You have women who may not even be physically attracted to the person that they're with, and that takes away too from when you're intimate. Everybody wants to be intimate with someone they're attracted to, not someone that's got stats. Oh, well, he's a servant or he's an elder, so that's the person I want to marry. Um, but yeah, there's just so many ways that yeah, sex is weaponized and destroys people. But as far as the thing on the masturbation, correct me if I'm wrong. Am I right that it's that it's made up? Like, is there anywhere in the Bible that clearly says that that's a sin?
You know what? I have for a long time wondered about that because I have never come across a scripture that talks about masturbation. I think that is for a reason. Um, I actually think your take on it is a more balanced, healthy one. It might not be ideal. it's never going to be as amazing and intense as being with another person. But like you said, it is a release. It kind of serves a purpose, you know? Um, yeah, exactly. It's a bit like instead of having a gourmet meal, you have a shake from McDonald's. I don't know if that's a good analogy, but
Oh,
I'm
makes
kind of
sense. Yep.
yeah, but I'm kind of driving at the fact that I think your take on it is a more healthy, balanced one. And I have seen a lot of I see so much um on, oh, you shouldn't even masturbate. Well, let's be realistic. People are gonna. They just don't talk about it. They do. Everybody does at some point. Um, unless they really are not having any sexual function at all, in which case it's probably a medical problem. And there are people who are asexual. There just seems to not be that side to them. But that's quite rare. And I would also say that there's kind of a misconception. So in the Bible, it does talk about the gift of singleness. Now, it used to be used a lot by Jehovah's Witnesses and the organization to say that's something to strive for. It is not something you strive for. Because it's a gift and a spiritual gift, it's something God has given to you. How do you know you have it? You know you have it because you've never even wanted to or entertained the thought of being with somebody. It just isn't a thing for you, and you know it's not for you.
That
That's
explains the word gift too.
it's extremely rare. I loved a Bible scholar who pointed out that in the whole of the New Testament, there's only two people who were given that gift, and one of them was Jesus. So you're not really meant to be single. One way or another, you are meant to be with somebody. That's how we're all created. To have the gift of singleness is very rare, and those people who have it normally know that they've got a very powerful walk with God and a calling that they absolutely love to go after. It is extremely rare. Majority of us are meant to be with somebody. That's how we're created, and that's actually what God intends for us. He created Adam and Eve to have a family and populate the earth, and he never went back on that. So, and it actually warns in the Bible that anybody who teaches against that is teaching something wrong. Actually
And
says that.
the term gift too, like it makes sense because a gift is not something that's forced to. That's not a gift, that's a punishment. So if it's a gift, then it's like it's a gift of, wow, I don't need anybody. I'm happy being alone so I can do more for God.
Yeah.
If you want to look at it that way. That's but to make somebody take a gift, oh, just be happy you're single. That's not a gift because people who struggle with that, they don't want to be single. That's the thing. Is sort of like our last guest, Eamon, talked about that of, and that's what the elders try to, oh, enjoy your singleness. Oh, it's a gift. No, it's not a gift if it's forced to you.
Yeah, exactly. So, how do you know you have the gift of singleness? Well, I'll tell you how you know that you don't have it. If you have sexual desires and if you have a desire to be with somebody, you do not have the gift of singleness. If you have any slight yearnings in your heart to be with somebody, you do not have the gift of singleness. Because if you had it, you would have complete peace. You would have peace of mind. You would have peace in your mind and body. You wouldn't be desiring to be with another person. So that's just to clear that up, that it is absolute codswallop that the organization tries to push on people again to control them. Why did they do it? They probably did it just to get people to work for them for free in Bethel. Oh, be single, work for the Lord, work for Jehovah. No, it's just so we get free volunteers. We don't have to pay anybody. Let's cultivate that narrative so we get more staff, more volunteers. It's
And
not a loving thing. It's not a loving thing to promote because family and having a partner is one of those things that God has gifted to us as an integral part of the human experience. So by limiting it, you are limiting people's ability to explore and live life.
yeah, and just to mention something positive, like kind of as we wrap this subject up, is that like, and I want to just put this out there for XJ or not XJWs, but Jehovah's Witnesses that are still witnesses that are either PMO or you're looking at videos like this and you're thinking about leaving. Our podcast is called Free and Alive, and I think that's a perfect title for what we're discussing because one of the best things about leaving the Jehovah's Witness religion is being free also when it comes to romance and wanting to find someone. You're no, it's no longer controlled. No one is going to tell you you have to date a person that has a certain stats, or they have to be a minister or they have to be an elder, or the woman's got to be a pioneer. None of that exists. And you're just free. Like if you want to wait to after marriage to be intimate, you can do that if that's something you want to do, but no one's going to punish you if you want to make sure you're sexually compatible before you maybe marry somebody. Um, if you want to move in with someone to see like if this is going to work, you have the freedom to do that. You can date who you want. You don't need a chaperone. You're not going to get judged, and you can just be free to find true love. And then when you find true love outside of the Jehovah's Witness religion, if you stay in a relationship, is because you want to. There's no forced marriages. There's no, well, you can't leave because they didn't go sleep with someone. So if you want to get free out of this marriage, you got to go sleep with somebody. You can just walk away. You don't have to legally get married if you don't want to. If you do want to get legally married, the court doesn't care. You could be legally married and simply tell the court, I just want a divorce. Why? I just don't want to be married to them, and that's it. That nobody's going to control you. And I think that people that leave the Jehovah's Witness religion can find true love, because true love is not based on the governing body setting any rules and saying that if you start to question religion, you're going to lose your marriage. Like that's not true love. So that's probably one of the best things about leaving this religion, is that you have freedom, and then you can start to experience a normal sexual life. If you want to masturbate, you can do that. If you want to go have a one night stand, you can do that, but not because you need that to get out of a marriage, you know. Um, but yeah, you can be free, and you don't need a watchtower telling you who to date, when to have sex, what you can do, what you can't do. And just one more thing I want to say is that the way that my marriage ended, I wish it didn't have to end ugly just because I'm questioning the governing body. I wasn't questioning her, I'm questioning some men that in New York. But even though it ended ugly, and some people who are starting to wake up they may be worried they're going to lose their spouse. My ex-wife leaving was the best thing to happen. Even though she technically wasn't free to marry, she left based on apostasy. So she could separate because I'm a so-called apostate. But then I countered her separation and I just divorced her. But the reason I bring it up is because I now am available to find a real relationship, not one controlled by a watchtower. And that's the advantage. So when you leave this organization, if your spouse wants to leave you or file separation, let them do it, because it means that they didn't really love you. They love the watchtower. And sometimes they have this remark in the religion. It's a saying. I don't know if you heard it in London, but they always say, like, when people are looking for a mate, make sure they love Jehovah more than they love you. That's like a saying. It's like a standard. What it really translates to is make sure that they're more obedient and loyalty to the governing body than they are to you. That's what it really translates to, but they think it translates to God, but no. Um, so again, that's not a real marriage. Those are my final thoughts on this subject. I don't know what your final thoughts are on what we discussed.
Well, I would just add to anyone out there who still maintains a faith in the Bible, a Christian faith, what the Bible actually says is confess to one another. So really what it's saying is, if something happens, you feel not great about it, find a friend you trust to speak with. If you don't have anybody available, find somebody like a counselor, maybe even a psychosexual counselor. They shouldn't judge you. They should just be there to support you, help you make sense of things. Deal with it like that. There is no need to go and talk to 3 elders. There's nowhere in the Bible that tells you you must do that. It is not their business what has happened to you, what you've done, what your private life is. It does not belong to them. Do not take it to them. They are not going to be respectful. And it's just none of their business. And Yeah, so I would say that, for example, I'm very involved in the music industry, and I was listening to an EP by a Christian rapper, and he'd obviously had like a battle with I don't know, it didn't really make it clear whether his battle or what it was, but it was of sexual nature. And he started off the EP with a phone conversation between him and a friend, and he just rings his friend and says, basically, I've slipped up again. And his mate says, I'm sorry to hear that. Let's pray. And he says a beautiful prayer, and then they start the EP. And I listened to it, and it just hit me that that's how it should be done. There shouldn't be a you're going to be going to the elders, you're going to be disfellowship, we're going to beat you over the head for months and years with your sin. No, Jesus covered the sins once for all time. There is no condemnation for those who are in Christ. Think about that statement. There is no condemnation for those who are in Christ, because your sin is already covered. All you need to do is say, I don't feel great about this. I want to actually pray about it and basically seek forgiveness. The minute you do that, it's forgotten. God has forgotten it. So if you feel that you've sinned, that's all you need to do. Pray, done. If you feel that you need a bit more support, speak to a trusted friend. If that friend is a believer, you can pray together. That is all you need to do. So I just want people's mind at rest, that don't allow the guilting, the shaming, the twisted, perverted demonizing of sex to ruin your life. That's really unhealthy. It's not how God ever intended it to be. So I would say that's the thing. There's a couple other things I would mention. I certainly can think of a sister whose life was absolutely ruined because her and her husband separated, and despite him no longer even going to witness meetings, he would absolutely refuse to ever admit that there was a scriptural basis. So she wasn't free. And that situation went on for years. And I think it was mental torture, you know, and they shouldn't allow that, but nobody was interested in helping her. And those sorts of situations carry on for years and decades in the organization. People's lives are ruined, absolutely ruined.
Yeah, and those things will improve too when you do free yourself from this religion. That's when you can start to repair those wounds and fix the damage done. So there's a lot of damage done, but you can fix that. And for those watching who are still in this religion, you will be you will feel a feeling of being free and happy, and then you can just explore what you want to explore and do what you want to do. And ultimately, it's between you and God, not the elders to sit you down and tell you, or like you said, Samantha, you get punished and things like that. It's really between you and God if you still have a faith. Um, but yeah, they control sex, they use it as a weapon, they demonize it, and it's really just sick, the whole idea that the only thing that you can do to get out of a marriage is go sleep with someone. Like, who made up that? So a woman could be in a relationship with a man that's beating her, but no, even that, nope, you're stuck with them. They can beat you, they can they can do whatever they want to do, but only if they cheat on you, then you can leave. So then if you go cheat on them, then you can create the ground. It's like, who comes up with that? It's almost like they should be rewarded by not cheating. So basically, the spouse that's in a bad relationship, if they didn't cheat, that should be the reward of, okay, you were good, you're free to leave. But it's like it's backwards. It's like the ones that go out and sleep with someone, they're the ones that get the free pass to leave. Like, okay, you slept, okay, now you can go because you slept. And I think too, like, it's so twisted. I really think there's a lot of psychology in that. Like, there's something I think that they figured out that just messes with people's minds when you do stuff like that. Like, okay, go sleep with someone, but then like, okay, you want to get out of marriage, so then you sleep with someone, but then you're gonna feel like horrible for doing that because now you sinned. Now you're gonna get reproved. You went and did something dirty, but you just want to get out of a bad marriage. So it's like it's mind games. But I don't know. My final words on it is like Watchtower has no business in your marriage. And for people who've married unbelievers, they're in a better situation because if you have an unbelieving mate, Watchtower doesn't have control over your marriage the way they do if you marry within this religion. I don't know, that's my final thoughts on it.
Yes, and I think that's definitely a good place to wrap it up. I have, however, had the thought during this episode that we should probably come back and talk about dating once you leave. Because especially if you've always been a witness and you've always been in a witness environment, dating among witnesses is a whole different story to dating a non-witness. So and it's a completely different culture on how people get together, completely different. So that might be something for us to explore in the future. But by all means, hit the comments section and let us know if you've got any questions, observations, and stories to share.